A warrant hunter rides into the Pale Belt. A memory trafficker is stealing names, voices, and identities from frontier settlements. Now Rhea must track him to Blackglass Observatory, where stolen echoes are waiting between the stars. Midnight Narratives Audiobooks presents Echoes Between Stars by D.R. Varyn. Prologue. The warrant that sang. The warrant sang before Rhea opened it. That was never a good sign. Most warrants arrived quiet. A legal packet, an identity marker, a last known drift, a reward number, and enough official language to make murder sound clerical. Some came with warning tags. Some came with psychological profiles. A few came with hazard estimates written by people who had never stood across a room from the person they wanted captured alive. This one sang. The sound came from the small black cylinder on Rhea's workbench aboard the Turn, her old one-person capture ship. It was not music, exactly. More like a human voice trying to remember a song through static, a child's hum, a woman's last breath. A man saying the same name over and over until it stopped being a name and became a place. Rhea sat very still. Across the cargo bay, Moss lifted his mechanical head. The cargo drone looked like a horse because Rhea liked old shapes. 4 carbon legs, black ceramic flank plates, a narrow sensor head, rein loops for manual riding, saddle clamps for prisoner transport or wounded evacuation. He was officially listed as a terrain hauler, Class C. He behaved like a judgmental animal with steel bones and opinions about everyone. Moss clicked once. "I hear it," Rhea said. The warrant cylinder rolled toward the edge of the bench by itself. She caught it before it fell. The casing was cold, not space cold, memory cold, the kind of cold that got under gloves and into bones. She thumbed the authorization seal. The cylinder projected a face into the bay. Male, lean, handsome in the way dangerous men often were when they had practiced looking harmless. Silver hair, pale eyes, a narrow scar along the lower lip. Dr. Ivo Sarn, former neural systems architect, charges illegal memory extraction, identity trafficking, unlawful consciousness storage, murder by cognitive reduction, corporate sabotage, frontier settlement collapse. Last known associate, Corinne Voss. Last confirmed location, Hadrian's Wake, Outer Mining Moon, Pale Belt. Capture status, alive preferred, dead permitted under verified nullfield threat. Reward, high enough to insult caution. Rhea read the file twice. Moss huffed compressed air through his intake vents. "Yes," she said, "that is too much money." The warrant changed. A second recording appeared, not official, not formatted. A woman in a miner's jacket stared into the lens, face grey with fear. Behind her, lights flickered in a corridor. Someone screamed once, far away. "If this reaches the warrant boards," the woman said, "tell them he did not kill us first. He emptied us. He took voices. He took colours. He took my husband's name from his own mouth." The image distorted. The woman looked to one side. "He says the dead are wasteful unless preserved. He says memory is the only currency the stars respect. If you send hunters, tell them not to listen when the echoes call." A shadow moved behind her. The woman whispered, "Corinne is here." The feed ended. Rhea leaned back. For a long moment, the only sound aboard the Turn was the old air recycler and the faint singing from the warrant. Then the ship computer spoke. "Do you accept memory warrant 97 Black?" Rhea looked at Moss. Moss turned his head away, which was how he expressed disgust at foolish decisions made without sufficient hay, fuel, or tactical review. Rhea picked up her long coat from the back of the chair. Accepted. The warrant stopped singing. That was worse. Chapter 1. Hadrian's Wake. Rhea rode into Cinderfall on Moss. People stared, which meant they were breathing, which meant the town was not yet dead. Cinderfall squatted inside a pressure valley on Hadrian's Wake, a mining moon that looked from orbit like a stone someone had tried to burn and then abandoned. Black ridges rose on both sides of the settlement. Dome shields shimmered overhead, filtering hard radiation into a dull copper afternoon. The main street was not dirt, because no sensible moon had dirt unless someone had paid extra for nostalgia. It was crushed slag sealed under resin, worn smooth by boots, crawler treads, and the heavy clank of cargo drones. Buildings stood in 2 lines beneath the dome. Prefabricated bunkhouses, a supply office, a medical cube, a magistrate post, 3 gambling stalls, and a 2-story saloon called the Pressure Drop. Its sign hissed every few seconds because the neon tube was cracked. Moss's black feet struck the resin road with hollow metallic knocks. Clank, clank, clank. The sound carried. A boy in a patched pressure vest stopped pushing a cart of oxygen canisters and stared open-mouthed. 2 women repairing a water line fell silent. A thin man in a corporate coat looked Rhea over and decided to sneer only after he had stepped behind a railing. Rhea tipped her hat lower. Moss rotated one sensor eye toward her. "I know," she murmured. "Friendly place." Moss vented a skeptical puff. Cinderfall's air tasted of warm copper, recycled sweat, and fear. Fear had a particular flavour in sealed environments. Not dramatic, not sharp. It lived in people's shoulders, in how fast they checked exits, in how quickly conversation stopped when a stranger arrived. Rhea had ridden through settlements after raids, strikes, plagues, debt seizures, and bad elections. Cinderfall felt like all of them had visited and left no forwarding address. Outside the pressure drop, a stable girl hurried from a drone rack. She was small, red-haired, pale under the dome light, and carrying a diagnostic wand too large for her hand. "Need a charge bay for your hauler, ma'am?" "Moss is not a hauler." Moss lifted his head with visible satisfaction. The girl blinked, begging pardon. "Need a charge bay for your horse." "That will do." The girl brightened. "Haven't seen one shaped like that. He hasn't seen anyone shaped like you either, so be polite to each other." Moss leaned down and sniffed her sleeve with his intake vents. The girl giggled. "He friendly. When he chooses, does he choose often? Less than people deserve." Rhea swung down from the saddle. Her boots hit the resin road. She took a silver credit chit from her coat and flicked it to the girl. The girl caught it with quick fingers. "For the bay," Rhea said. "And for discretion." The girl glanced at the pressure drop, then back at Rhea. "Discretion costs more when folks ask loud." Rhea handed her a second chit. The girl nodded. "Then I heard nothing already." Inside, the pressure drop did its best to pretend it was a frontier tavern instead of a sealed metal room 1 breach away from collective suffocation. The floor was resin sprinkled with fake sawdust. Round tables bolted to the deck. Lanterns hung from ceiling hooks, though the actual light came from recessed strips. A bar ran along the left wall beneath a dusty mural of old earth mountains nobody in the room had seen. The bartender was broad, bald, and angry by habit. "Room?" he asked. "Drink first. What kind? Whiskey, if it remembers being whiskey." That earned the smallest lift of one eyebrow. He poured from a brown bottle into a steel cup and set it down hard. Rhea drank it in 1 swallow. It burned correctly. The room watched. She set the cup down. "I'm looking for a man." The bartender's mouth tightened. "Most trouble starts that way. This trouble started before I arrived." "Name?" "Evo Sarn." Someone at the far table dropped a fork. The bartender looked at the fork, then at Rhea. "Don't know him." "You answered too late. I said I don't know him." Rhea placed her warrant badge on the bar. Not flashy, just black metal with a white legal burn through the centre. The bartender did not touch it. "Void warrant," he muttered. "Memory warrant." His face changed. People feared killers, they hated thieves, but memory crimes put a different kind of quiet in a room. Everyone carried something inside they could not afford to lose. The bartender leaned closer. "Take your badge and get off this moon." "After Sarn. If he passed through, he's gone." "When?" "I didn't say he passed. You are bad at this." The front door opened. 3 men entered laughing too loudly. The first was tall, narrow, and young, with a deputy patch on his shoulder and the swagger of a man who mistook local authority for mass. The 2 behind him wore mining belts and cheap sidearms. They smelled of pressure beer and borrowed courage. "Well now," the deputy said, stopping behind Rhea. "What fell out of orbit?" Rhea did not turn. The bartender closed his eyes. That told her plenty. The deputy stepped closer. "You lost, Hunter." "No. Then maybe you don't know whose town this is. Likely not yours." The two men behind him laughed, then stopped when he did not. His hand moved toward her shoulder. Rhea caught his wrist without looking. She did not squeeze hard. Not yet. "Do not finish that mistake," she said. The deputy hissed. "You know who I am." A man with an unwounded wrist. She tightened slightly. He dropped to one knee before pride could negotiate. The room went silent. Rhea turned her head just enough to see his face. "Name? Deputy Len Marr," he spat. "Deputy Marr. I am tired from travel, armed under 3 jurisdictions, and legally permitted to break whatever part of you interferes with a black warrant. Apologize to your wrist." "What?" She tightened again. He gasped. "Sorry, to the wrist." His face reddened. "I'm sorry, wrist." Rhea released him. A short laugh escaped from somewhere near the back. Deputy Marr scrambled up, humiliated enough to become dangerous. His hand dropped to his pistol. The bartender slammed a palm on the bar. "Len, not in here." Rhea's coat opened just enough to reveal the null-shot revolver at her hip. Len saw it. So did everyone else. He spat on the floor. Another time. "Bring better judgment," Rhea said. He left with his friends trailing. The bartender stared at the floor where Len had spat. "That boy will come back. Most mistakes do. You should leave. You should answer." He looked at her for a long moment, then slid her cup aside. "Sarn came through 4 days ago. With a big man. Corin Voss, if the rumours are true, didn't speak much, left half the room feeling like they'd forgotten why they came in." "Where did they go?" "South Ridge, toward the old observatory line." "Blackglass?" The bartender flinched. "People don't go there." "Sarn did." "Then maybe he isn't people." Before she could leave, a door behind the bar opened, and a young man was shoved into the room by a corporate security officer. He was 19 or 20, thin, brown-skinned, with tired eyes and a clerk's ink stain still visible on his fingertips. His hands were cuffed. Behind him came Deputy Len Marr, already smiling again. "Found our runaway," Len announced. "Tobin Marr, under indenture violation, immoral association, contract theft, and attempted escape." The young man lifted his head. His eyes met Rhea's. Not pleading. Not yet. Worse. Trying not to. Behind him, another prisoner stumbled through the door, a pale young man with dark hair, a bruised cheek, and a brand glow mark on his jaw. Sef Arlow. Rhea did not know the name yet, but she knew the mark, transferable labour designation, corporate slavery with cleaner paperwork. The room looked away. Rhea sighed. "I hate frontier law," she said. Chapter 2. The men the town would sell. Marshal Jalen Crow arrived looking like a man who had spent the last year losing arguments with his own conscience. He was broad, grey-bearded, and dressed in a brown pressure coat with the Cinderfall security star pinned over the heart. He glanced first at Deputy Len, then at Tobin and Sef, then at Rhea, and the order told her he was not stupid. Stupid lawmen looked first at the stranger. Afraid ones looked first at the problem they already knew. "What's all this?" Crow asked. Len shoved Tobin forward. "Fugitives. My brother and his degenerate companion caught them near the recycler sheds." Sef jerked against his cuffs. "Companion? Say lover if you mean lover, you coward." Len hit him. Not hard enough to break anything, hard enough to tell the room what kind of man he was. Rhea moved before deciding to. Her hand closed around Len's collar, and she drove him backward against the bar. The impact rattled bottles. "Again," she said softly, and I removed the hand. Len's face twisted. "Marshal!" Crow did not draw. "Interesting." Rhea looked at him. "What crime?" Crow's jaw worked. "Indenture breach. For both. Tobin belongs to Helix Ore under family debt contract. Sef was sentenced to labour transfer for breach of moral conduct statutes." Rhea stared. The saloon seemed smaller suddenly. "What exactly was the moral conduct?" Sef laughed. There was blood on his lip. "He kissed me," Tobin said. His voice shook but did not break. Rhea let go of Len. He stumbled away, rubbing his throat. She turned fully toward Crow. "You are selling a man into labour for kissing another man." Crow's eyes lowered. "It's corporate code," he muttered. "No, it is cowardice written down," Len snapped. "You don't come here and insult our laws." "I just did. You void hunters think a badge makes you better than us." No, conduct does. The room breathed in. Rhea knew this moment. Every frontier settlement had one. The instant a room decided whether cruelty would remain ordinary or become visible. Visibility frightened people. It asked them to choose. Len drew his pistol. Rhea raised her left hand. The null band around her wrist blinked once. Len fired. The bullet stopped 6 inches from Rhea's palm and hung spinning in the air, caught in a localized inertia sink. Several people screamed. Moss bellowed from outside, sensor alarms flaring through the open door. Rhea lowered her hand. The bullet dropped onto the floor and rolled in a small circle. No more guns in a pressure town, she said. Len stared like a man watching religion fail. Witch, he whispered. Rhea tilted her head. Technician, if you can manage the larger word. Crow finally drew his weapon. Not at Rhea. At Len. Put yours down. Len turned, stunned. Marshal? Now? For a moment, Rhea thought the deputy might shoot his own superior. Then Len lowered the pistol. Crow took it from him. I should have done this months ago, the marshal said. Yes, Rhea replied. He winced. You always this comforting? No. Crow unlocked Tobin's cuffs, then Sef's. Len made a strangled sound. You can't release them. Crow looked suddenly old. I can release them into off-moon custody, under emergency witness protection. Whose custody? Rhea closed her eyes. She could feel the trap building around her. Mine, apparently. Tobin rubbed his wrists. I don't understand. That makes 2 of us, Rhea said. Sef stepped between Tobin and everyone else. We're not going with another badge. I'm not a badge. You showed one. I showed a warrant. Different disease. Tobin studied her. His fear had not gone. It had become thought. You are hunting the man who came through here. Yes. The silver-haired one. Rhea's attention sharpened. You saw Sarn? Tobin swallowed. I processed his landing chit. He paid in old credits. Real metal, not station issue. His big friend had no reflection in the counterglass. Rhea did not like that. Sef whispered. Tobin? What? Don't help her, she helped us. She helped because she hates Len. Both can be true, Rhea said. Sef glared. Mira Font entered just then as if summoned by the universe's need for poor timing. She was tall, dark-skinned, wrapped in a patchwork travel coat, with a wide hat, a toothpick between her teeth, and a smile bright enough to get her arrested in 3 systems. Well, she said, looking at Rhea. A black-coated hunter, 2 pretty fugitives, 1 humiliated deputy, and a marshal reconsidering his career. I always miss the quiet parts. Crow groaned. Mira? Rhea looked her over. Friend of yours? Debatable, Crow said. Mira removed the toothpick. Mira Font, scout, trader, guide, finder of lost fools, and occasional lost fool myself. Rhea said nothing. Mira's grin widened. And you are? Leaving, oh good, I like trips. You are not invited. Best trips start that way. Tobin looked between them. Sef rubbed his bruised jaw. Len glared like a wound. Crow handed Rhea a local transit card. South Ridge Line is dangerous. Old pressure tunnels. Signal ghosts. Mining collapses. If Sarn went to Blackglass Observatory, he went where bad things go to feel understood. Rhea took the card. Can you keep Len from following? Crow looked at his deputy. For a while. Mira clapped once. Then I suggest we all move before a while gets bored. Rhea turned to her. There is no we. Mira pointed at Tobin. He knows Sarn's landing code. The scared handsome one knows the det patrol patterns. I know the ridge. You know how to stop bullets. Seems like a we to me. Moss pushed his head through the saloon doorway and huffed directly at Rhea. She stared at the drone. Do not vote. Moss clicked twice. Rhea sighed. This was how trouble became a travelling party. Chapter 3. No fire under a dead dome. They left Cinderfall before station night. Rhea rode Moss. Tobin rode behind her, because he had never been on a quadruped dome, and Moss refused to let Sef climb first. Sef rode with Mira on a rented crawler bike that complained at every incline. The road south wound under the dome edge, past slag farms and cracked solar fields, then through an airlock gate into the outer ridge tunnels. Hadrian's wake opened around them, black stone, copper dust, stars sharp enough to cut, and the pale line of the distant gas giant rising beyond the horizon. There was no wind outside the dome. Only suit comms, boot magnets, drone clanks, crawler whine, and the silence of a moon too small to forgive mistakes. Tobin's arms tightened around Rhea's coat. "First time outside pressure?" she asked. "Yes. Breathe normally. I am trying. Try less dramatically." "I don't know how dramatic breathing works. You are doing advanced work already." Mira's voice crackled over comms from the crawler. "Hunter? I like him. He panics politely." Sef snapped. "He's not entertainment. No sugar. He's commentary. My name is Sef, and mine is Mira. But life improves when we diversify." Rhea muted Mira for 10 seconds. Peace blossomed. Tobin leaned closer. "Can you really stop bullets? Sometimes. That seems like an answer with teeth." "It is. How?" "Nullfield band. Cancels local kinetic transfer for a short interval. It has limits." "What limits?" "Enough that I avoid explaining them near people who may shoot me." He went quiet. After a while he said, "Len is my brother. I heard. He wasn't always like that. People rarely are. I keep thinking I must have done something wrong. Not just the contract breach, before. Something that made him hate me." Rhea looked ahead into the black ridge path. "No, you don't know that." "Yes, I do." The certainty in her voice silenced him more effectively than comfort. They made camp in an abandoned pump station, half buried in ridge shadow. Its dome still held pressure after Mira kicked the regulator twice and called it sweetheart, in a tone that suggested violence. Inside, old pipes lined the walls. Rhea set Moss to watch mode at the hatch. He folded his legs beneath him and angled one sensor toward Sef, whom he did not trust. "Smart machine," Sef muttered. Moss clicked agreement. Rhea unpacked heat coins. Not coins, really, but flat thermal cells shaped like old frontier currency. She placed 3 in a triangle and activated them with a thumb sweep. Orange warmth filled the center of the room. Tobin stared. "That isn't standard." "No, can you teach me?" Sef looked up sharply. "Tobin, what? I can ask." Rhea set a water tin above the thermal cells. "Nullcraft requires calibration implants, neural patience, and years of not dying." That sounded almost like no. It was wearing a hat. Mira laughed. Sef did not. "You enjoy this," he said to Rhea. "What?" "Being mysterious. Having everyone look at you like you fell out of a myth." Rhea sat back. "No. Could have fooled me. I suspect many things could." Tobin winced. "Sef. No, she drags us out of one cage and expects gratitude while chasing a man who empties towns. Why? Money." Rhea met his glare. "Yes." Sef blinked. Rhea continued. "Also law. Also because Sarn will keep doing it. Also because I heard a woman in a dying recording ask for help. Motives are rarely tidy. Beware people who polish theirs." Mira pointed at Rhea. "I am stealing that. You cannot afford it." Mira clutched her chest. Cruel beauty. Sef looked away. Tobin touched his arm. Sef softened by half a breath. Rhea noticed. She noticed everything. It was exhausting. Later, after they ate protein cakes and bad tea, Tobin sat near the thermal cells with his eyes closed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he whispered. Rhea glanced over. "What are you doing?" "Meditating. Badly." His eyes opened. "Is there a good way?" "Eventually. Will it help me learn Nullcraft?" "No." He looked disappointed. "It may help you hear yourself think," Rhea added. "That sounds less useful." "It is more useful than most weapons." Across the room, Mira repaired the crawler's cracked intake with wire and insults. Sef pretended to sleep. Moss watched the hatch. Rhea did not sleep. At midnight cycle, the warrant cylinder began singing in her coat pocket. She stepped outside. The moon stretched black under stars. Far south, beyond the ridges, a faint grey shimmer moved along the horizon, not fog. Hadrian's wake had no weather outside domes, a null-field bloom. Sarn was working. The singing in the cylinder became words. Rhea Vale. She froze. The voice was not Sarn's. It was her mother's. Moss rose inside the hatch, metal feet whispering. The warrant whispered again. Rhea, come home. Rhea closed her fist around the cylinder until the casing creaked. My mother is dead, she said. The voice answered in a layered chorus. Not entirely. Chapter 4. The Pale Settlement. By dawn cycle, the south ridge had lost colour. It began at the stones. Black basalt softened into ash grey. Copper dust dulled. Warning paint on old pipeline markers faded from orange to the memory of orange. Even the stars looked less sharp above that stretch of moon, as if someone had breathed on the glass of reality. Mira stopped the crawler. Well, she said, that is unkind. Rhea dismounted. Her boots crunched on dust that should have been dark but was not. Moss stayed close, sensor lights dimmed. Tobin and Sef stood beside the crawler, both suddenly quiet. Ahead, a small pressure hamlet sat beneath a cracked dome. The sign over the outer lock read, Greyhold Pump Annex. Someone had scratched underneath it. Do not listen. Tobin swallowed. That seems direct. Mira checked her sidearm. I appreciate concise warnings. Saves time. Rhea approached the lock. The panel still had power. She keyed a manual open. The hatch groaned, cycled and released stale air into the lock chamber. Inside Greyhold, silence waited. Not ordinary silence. Nullfield silence. A settlement should hum. Lights, pumps, fans, human bodies, electrical systems, distant complaints. Greyhold had none of it. The interior road was lined with modular homes, a supply kiosk, pressure laundry, and a chapel cube with its door hanging open. Everything had been drained to pale grey. Walls, tools, clothing hung on a line, a child's ball in the street. No bodies, that was the worst part. Sef whispered, Where is everyone? Rhea crouched by the ball. It had a name written on it in faded inquiry. Not gone, she said. Tobin hugged himself. What does that mean? A sound came from behind the laundry. Wet breathing. Mira raised her pistol. Rhea lifted one hand. A man stepped into the road. He had been broad once. A worker, probably. His skin was grey from scalp to fingers. His eyes were black. Not dark brown, not shadowed. Black, like holes punched through paper. He opened his mouth. A child's voice came out. Have you seen my ball? Tobin made a broken sound. The grey man lunged. Rhea fired her null shot. The round struck his chest and opened into a blue-white containment web. The man hit the ground hard, limbs spasming, not dead, but held. Sef shouted, What is he? Victim. Victims don't charge people. Some do. More figures emerged from the homes. 5, 10, 20. Men, women, a child, an old woman in a pressure shawl. Grey skin, black eyes, voices wrong in their throats. Rhea, one said in her mother's voice. Don't, she whispered. Come home, said another. Mira's face had gone pale. They are using our memories. No, Rhea said. Sarn is... Tobin stared at the nearest grey child. Can they be saved? Rhea did not answer quickly enough. The grey figures ran. Moss, she shouted. Moss charged. The drone hit the first wave like a black machine storm, knocking bodies aside with controlled force. Not crushing. Not killing. Rhea fired containment rounds. Mira shot legs and shoulders with stunning precision. Sef dragged Tobin behind a water tank, then surprised everyone by firing a pulse pistol with steady hands. Where did you get that? Tobin yelled. Stole it from Len before we left. That is theft. That is preparation. Mira laughed breathlessly over comms. I like him better now. A grey woman seized Rhea from behind. The woman's mouth brushed Rhea's ear. This time the voice was Rhea's own. You always leave them. Rhea slammed her head backward, broke the grip, spun, and struck with the butt of her revolver. The woman fell. A boy no older than 10 rushed at Tobin. Tobin did not fire. He stood frozen. Sef tackled the boy instead, taking both of them to the ground. The boy bit his arm through the sleeve. Sef cried out. Tobin grabbed a broken pipe and struck, not the boy's head, but the ground beside his ear. The clang stunned him long enough for Rhea to fire a containment web. Then the settlement speakers crackled. Dr. Evo Sarn's voice filled Greyhold. Hunter Vale, you are earlier than expected. Rhea turned in a slow circle. Sarn, you brought unlicensed variables. How sentimental come out. I'm not there. No, You are a coward from a distance. A soft laugh. You think in old categories: cowardice, courage, guilt, justice. I think in preservation. These people were dying by inches in corporate service. I made them part of something larger. Mira shouted. You made them hollow. Only temporarily. Identity is inefficient when unstructured. Memory, however, has value. Tobin yelled. They had names! The speaker hissed. Names are containers. I harvest contents. Rhea's voice went colder. I am going to find you. I know. That is why I left you a trail. The settlement power failed. All at once the grey figures collapsed. The silence that followed felt like a held breath. Then one of the contained victims whispered, in his own voice this time, Blackglass. Rhea knelt beside him. His black eyes flickered brown for half a second. Please, he said, don't let him make us sing. Then he was gone again. Chapter 5. Mira Font lies beautifully. They should have turned back. Everyone knew it, including Rhea, which made continuing feel less heroic and more like arithmetic with missing numbers. Greyhold had medical supplies, water packs, 2 working oxygen tanks, and a sealed storage room full of emergency rations. It also had 31 living victims in containment collapse. None stable enough to move far, and none safe enough to release. Rhea called Marshal Crow and sent coordinates with a warning that any rescue team should wear memory dampers and bring restraint webs. Crow answered on the 3rd attempt. His voice sounded worse than before. Len took 6 men and went south after you. Rhea closed her eyes. Of course he did. I tried to stop him. Try harder next time. He locked me in my own holding room. Mira leaned into the comm pickup. Marshal, sweetheart, that is embarrassing even before we discuss symbolism. Crow muttered something impolite. Rhea said, Send rescue to Greyhold. Then stay in Cinderfall. What about you? I am going to Blackglass. Alone. Rhea looked at Tobin, Sef, Mira and Moss. No, she said, unhappy with the fact. They took the ridge crawler and Moss because the path ahead was too broken for speed and too dangerous for pride. Blackglass Observatory lay beyond the old mining line, 6 hours south, through shattered basalt and abandoned antenna fields. It had been built before Hadrian's wake became a corporate moon, back when astronomers still believed knowledge could survive funding committees. Mira drove. She drove like someone who had learned from crashes and not forgiveness. Tobin sat beside her, studying Sarn's stolen landing code from memory. Sef sat behind him, bandaged arm across his chest, glaring at anyone who looked concerned. Rhea rode Moss alongside the crawler because Moss refused to be cargo. After an hour, Mira started talking. So, Hunter, how many warrants have you run? Enough. That means many or traumatic. Yes. You always this chatty. No. Was that a joke? No. Mira sighed happily. I adore a challenge. Sef leaned forward. Why are you here? Mira glanced back. Because your face invited rescue. My face did no such thing. It did. Very tragic. Cheekbones full of bad decisions. I don't trust you. Healthy. Keep that. But trust this. Sarn came through Cinderfall with a metal case and a dead man's voice playing from it. I heard my sister call my name from inside that case. The crawler went quiet. Mira's smile remained, but it had no joy left. She died 3 years ago in a survey collapse, Mira said. No body, no full recording, just the official line, unrecoverable. Then Sarn walks through with her voice trapped in his luggage. Rhea studied her. You were following him before me. Sure was. Why attach yourself to us? Because when I tried alone, Corin Voss broke 3 of my ribs and told me my sister sounded better when she was afraid. Sef's anger shifted direction. Tobin whispered, I'm sorry. Mira winked at him. Don't be Lommy. My name is Tobin. Had a Tobin betray me once. You can be Lommy until morale improves. Despite everything, Tobin smiled. Rhea said, Do not rename my witness. Your witness looks like he needed a smaller name to carry for a while. Tobin looked at Rhea. I don't mind, Sef muttered. Of course you don't. Tobin turned. What does that mean? It means you accept kindness from strangers too quickly. No, it means I recognize kindness because I have had so little practice receiving it. Sef looked away as if struck. Mira's voice softened. Well now, That was a clean shot. Rhea let them sit in the silence. Later, they found Len's men, not Len, his men. 6 corporate deputies stood in the middle of the ridge road in a perfect line. Their suits were intact, their weapons holstered, their faces pale grey, their eyes black. Each held a small speaker in one hand. The speakers activated together. "Rhea Vale," Sarn said. "You continue to collect broken things." Rhea dismounted. "Where is Len?" Being educated, Tobin surged forward. Sef grabbed him. Sarn continued through the speakers. "Family memory is powerful. Shame, stronger. Brothers provide excellent resonance." Rhea raised her revolver. "I am done listening. Not yet." The 6 grey deputies opened their mouths. They spoke in Len Marr's voice. "Tobin, repent. Tobin, come home. Tobin, you made me hate you. Tobin, you were always wrong." Tobin folded inward, hands over his ears. Sef held him. "Don't listen. Don't you dare listen." Rhea fired 6 times. Each null shot struck a deputy and webbed him to the ground. The speakers fell silent. Tobin shook so hard he could barely stand. Rhea reloaded. Mira got out of the crawler and walked to one of the fallen deputies. She kicked the speaker hard enough to crack it. That, she said, was impolite. Then the ridge behind them exploded, not with fire, with absence. A circle of the world went silent and grey as a nullfield mine opened beneath the road. The crawler slid sideways. Moss dug his feet into stone. Tobin fell. Sef lost his grip and skidded toward the widening pale circle. Rhea launched herself from Moss. She caught Sef's wrist at the edge. For 1 second, everything stopped. Sef looked up at her, eyes wide. "I thought you disliked me," he gasped. "I do." She pulled. Mira and Tobin grabbed her coat and hauled them both back. The nullfield mine collapsed with a sound like a breath being erased. Sef lay on the ground, shaking. "Thank you," he whispered. Rhea stood, dusted her coat, and looked south. "Save it for when we live." Chapter 6. Blackglass Observatory. Blackglass Observatory rose from the ridge like a dead eye. Its dome was cracked but intact, built from dark mirror panels that reflected stars even in daylight cycle. Old antenna spires surrounded it in a broken crown. Mining roads ended 1/2 kilometre away, as if the machines themselves had refused to approach. The whole structure hummed with stolen voices. Rhea heard her mother. Mira heard her sister. Tobin heard Len. Sef heard himself saying things he feared were true. Moss heard something too, though he expressed it by refusing to move until Rhea placed one hand on his sensor head. "Stay outside," she told him. Moss clicked a protest. "You are too large for observatory corridors." He vented, and yes, too dignified. He settled, mollified. They entered through a maintenance lock. Inside, Blackglass smelled of old vacuum, burnt insulation and antiseptic. The main corridor sloped downward into the moon, lined with observation rooms converted into laboratories. Memory tanks glowed behind glass. Some held liquid, some held brains, some held only light. Tobin gagged. Sef pulled him close. Mira stopped before one tank. Inside, a cluster of silver filaments pulsed to the rhythm of a voice. "Mira," it whispered. "Little star." Her face crumpled. Rhea stepped beside her. "Is it her?" Mira swallowed. "A piece. That was worse than no. They found Corin Voss in the central chamber." He stood before a huge array of black glass mirrors aimed at the stars. He was bigger than the warrant image suggested. Bald, broad, grey-veined, with a chest harness full of memory ampules. His eyes were not black. They were empty. Dr. Ivo Sarn stood behind him at the main console in a white coat clean enough to be obscene. "Hunter Vale," Sarn said. "You survived the road. You overplanned it." "I often do." Rhea aimed her revolver. "Step away from the console." "I cannot. The echo choir is nearly aligned." The black glass mirrors flickered. Voices filled the chamber. Hundreds, maybe thousands. The missing of Greyhold. The dead of survey collapses. Miners, pilots, children, Rhea's mother, Mira's sister. Tobin's childhood prayers. Sef's private apologies, all layered into a vast humming chorus. Sarn lifted one hand. "Do you understand now? Bodies fail. Records lie. Monuments decay, but memory can be patterned, amplified, and sent between stars. No one need vanish again. Rhea's voice remained steady. You did not preserve them. You stole them. Crude language, accurate language. Corin moved. Fast! Rhea fired. The null shot hit his shoulder and dissolved. His harness drank the field. He struck her across the chamber. She hit the floor hard enough to see white. Sef fired at Corin. Mira threw 2 shock knives. Tobin ran for the console because bravery and terror had finally become the same motion. Sarn caught Tobin by the throat. "Curious boy," he said. "You have a flexible mind. Shame, longing, love, fear. Excellent carrier profile." Sef shouted and charged. Corin backhanded him into a mirror support. Mira went for her sister's tank. "Tell me how to open it." Sarn smiled. "You cannot free a song by breaking the instrument." Rhea forced herself up. Her ribs screamed. The warrant cylinder in her coat began singing again. This time the echo choir spoke through it. "Rhea Vale, listen." Not to him. To us. She froze. Sarn's expression changed. The choir continued. "We are not his. We are not whole. We are not gone. Ask." Rhea understood. Sarn had been using stolen memory as material. He had never asked what remained inside it. Consent. Even echoes could refuse. Rhea dropped her revolver and pulled the warrant cylinder free. "Sarn," she said. He looked at her. She crushed the cylinder against the floor. Its containment seal broke. The chamber filled with voices, no longer filtered through Sarn's machine. Mira's sister screamed, "Mira, run left!" Mira obeyed just as Corin lunged. He smashed into a tank instead. Len's voice, thin and terrified, cried, "Tobin, I'm sorry, I'm sorry!" Tobin drove his elbow into Sarn's ribs and broke free. Rhea's mother whispered, "Duck!" Rhea ducked. Corin's swing passed over her head. She drew the emergency blade from her boot and cut the memory ampule feed on his harness. Corin howled. Not in pain. In sudden selfhood, his eyes filled with colour for one terrible second. "Please," he said. Then Sarn triggered the final alignment. The blackglass mirrors opened to space. The echo choir began transmitting, not as Sarn intended, not as a weaponized archive, but as testimony. Every stolen name. Every crime, every location, every corporate buyer, every dead settlement, every voice saying we were taken. Sarn stared at the mirrors. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no, that is not the pattern." Rhea stood behind him. "No," she said, "that is the witness." He turned with a small surgical knife. She broke his wrist. The knife fell. Tobin picked up Rhea's revolver and aimed it at Sarn with both hands shaking. Sarn smiled at him. "You won't." Tobin's voice was soft. "No?" Sef stood beside him, bruised and bleeding. "We won't," Sef said. "She will?" Rhea took the revolver. Sarn looked at her. "Alive preferred. Dead permitted under verified nullfield threat." He laughed once. "Am I threatening you?" "No." Rhea looked at the mirrors, the tanks, the stolen voices, Corin collapsing under the weight of what had been done to him. "You are threatening them." She fired a containment round into Sarn's chest. Not lethal. Worse for a man like him. It pinned him to his own console while the echo choir broadcast every truth he had buried. Chapter 7. The choir of taken names. The dead did not come back. Rhea hated that this needed saying. Stories liked to cheat at grief. They liked ghosts who gave advice, mothers who offered closure, sisters who sang one final song, brothers who apologized and became good in memory because the living needed them tidy. Blackglass gave them fragments. Mira heard enough of her sister to know she had been afraid at the end and brave anyway. Tobin heard enough of Len to know his brother's hatred had cracked before Sarn hollowed him, but not enough to excuse the years before. Rhea heard enough of her mother to remember the smell of engine oil in her hair and the old lullaby she used to hum while repairing pressure locks. Enough was not whole. Enough hurt. Marshal Crowe arrived with rescue crews 8 hours later. He came personally, shamefaced and armed. Behind him came medical teams, warrant marshals, independent journalists, 2 Union ships, and an emergency tribunal clerk who looked as if he had aged 10 years while reading the echo choir broadcast. Sarn was taken alive. He hated that Corin Voss died before rescue could stabilize him. His final words were his own name, spoken like a man finding a door in the dark. Len Marr survived. Barely. Tobin visited him once in the medical hold. Sef waited outside. Rhea did not ask what was said. When Tobin emerged, he looked older but not smaller. "He said he was sorry," Tobin told Sef. Sef stiffened. And I said I believed him." Sef's jaw tightened. Tobin took his hand. "I did not say I forgave him." Sef breathed out. Mira, who had been pretending not to listen from 10 feet away, wiped her eyes and said, "Well, Lomi, that was inconveniently mature." "My name is Tobin. Not today." Rhea leaned against moss outside the observatory lock and watched emergency crews carry memory tanks into shielded transports. The black-glass mirrors above had gone dark. Without the stolen voices, the observatory seemed smaller. Just a building. Just a crime scene. Just another place where someone had confused brilliance with permission. Crow approached. "You saved the settlements," he said. "No," he frowned. "We found what was left," Rhea said. "Saving would have been earlier." Crow accepted the correction because he had begun learning. "The warrant board confirms payment." Rhea looked at him. "And," Crow added, "Cinderfall's contract court has suspended all moral conduct indentures pending review." "Suspended. For now. Push harder. I will—" She believed him enough to stop talking. Mira came to stand beside her. "So," Mira said, "where does a woman go after ruining a memory empire?" "Somewhere quiet." "That sounds fictional." "It is. Tobin and Sef need passage. I have 2 spare bunks." "You have 1 spare bunk and a storage shelf." "They are young. Cruel." Rhea glanced at her. "You also need passage." Mira placed a hand over her heart. "Hunter, if you wanted my company, all you had to do was ask." "I did not ask. Yet here I am generously answering." Moss huffed. Mira pointed at him. "See?" "Your horse likes me." Moss clicked no. "He is shy." Rhea almost smiled. Almost. That evening cycle, the echo choir transmitted one final unscheduled signal before the tribunal sealed the black-glass array. It was not a song. It was a list. Names. Thousands of them. Some dead. Some living. Some partial. Some repeated by voices that could not remember anything else. The list travelled from Hadrian's wake to every listening station in the Pale Belt. Families heard it. Courts heard it. Corporations heard it. Hunters heard it. So did people who had never cared about memory crime because it had not yet stolen from them. By morning, Sarn's buyers were running. By noon, new warrants sang. Rhea listened to 6 of them and accepted none. Not yet. She had passengers. Coda. The quiet after warrants. 3 weeks later, the turn limped through the belt with too many people aboard and not enough silence. Tobin read everything he could find about nullcraft, memory law, warrant procedure, and shipboard systems. He asked questions with the desperate hunger of someone who had been told all his life that curiosity was disobedience. Sef complained about the food, the bunks, the air temperature, the shower timer, Mira's singing, Moss's judgmental lights, and the way stars looked too sharp through the cockpit glass. He also patched Tobin's bruises, checked his sleep, and sat beside him during nightmares without saying a word. Mira made herself unavoidable. She repaired things before Rhea admitted they were broken. She sang off-key. She renamed the ship Sweet Tragedy until Rhea threatened to eject a boot. She flirted with danger, boredom, and occasionally Rhea, though never when grief was too close to be funny. Moss tolerated everyone except Sef, whom he eventually permitted to polish one flank plate as a probationary trust exercise. Rhea returned the official warrant file from Sarn's capture with one addition. Do not classify victims as recovered assets. Do not classify memory fragments as evidence only. Names must remain attached to all testimony. The warrant board objected to the phrasing. She sent it again. One evening, Tobin found her in the cargo bay cleaning her revolver. "Can I stay?" he asked. Rhea did not look up. "You are already aboard. I mean, after we reach a safe port. No port is safe enough to deserve the name. Then after we reach a less dangerous one." She set the revolver aside. Sef stood in the corridor behind him, pretending not to care. Mira leaned above them from the ladder well, pretending nothing at all. Rhea sighed. "I am not a teacher." Tobin smiled faintly. "Good. I was never a good student. That is not a recommendation. I want to help people like us." Rhea looked at Sef. "And you?" Sef folded his arms. "I go where he goes." "That is not an answer. It is mine." Mira dropped lightly from the ladder. "I, for one, think this is a terrible idea, which is how I know it has narrative promise." Rhea stared at her. Mira grinned. "Also, I am staying. I did not ask, and yet I continue answering." Moss clicked 3 times. Everyone looked at him. The ship computer translated from his behavior log. "Cargo drone Moss indicates crew expansion is inefficient but acceptable." Sef blinked. "The horse gets a vote." "Moss gets 2, Rhea said. "He is more sensible than most people." Tobin laughed. It was the first easy laugh Rhea had heard from him. She picked up the next warrant cylinder from the bench. It was black, sealed and silent. For once, silent felt like mercy. Outside, the stars stretched across the forward glass, cold and innumerable. Somewhere among them were more lost settlements, more bad laws, more men like Sarn, more people running from cages that had official names. Rhea Vale had never believed justice was a light. Light was too clean. Justice was a bootstep in dust, a hand unlocking cuffs, a drone refusing to move until a frightened girl was safe. A witness speaking after the room had decided silence was cheaper, a name carried between stars until someone answered. She loaded the warrant into the reader. Mira leaned close. "Where to, Hunter?" Rhea listened as the new file opened. This one did not sing, but somewhere beneath the static, she thought she heard an echo. She put on her hat. "Forward," she said. Moss rose. The turn turned toward the dark, and the echoes between stars followed them home.